Hey everyone, welcome back. Before we dive in today, I want you to imagine something with me for a second. It's December 28th, 2002. You're standing on this tiny island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, Kwajalein Atoll, and you've just watched your third rocket explode. Not someone else's rocket, your rocket. $300 million of your own money just gone, up in smoke, literally. Everyone's looking at you, your engineers, the people who believed in you, the people who left their comfortable jobs because you convinced them we could make space travel affordable. And they're all thinking the same thing. Is he going to call it? Would you call it? Be honest with yourself. 3 massive, very public failures. Your reputation on the line, your fortune disappearing. Elon Musk picked up a marker and started doing math on a whiteboard. He turned to his team and said, "We have enough money for 1 more launch, maybe 2 if I sell everything." That moment right there, that's what this whole episode is about, because I think most of us fundamentally misunderstand what makes Elon Musk Elon Musk. We think he's successful because he's smart, or because he works hard, or because he's got some kind of vision. And yeah, sure, all of that's true, but I think we're missing the most important part. Elon Musk has learned to use chaos as a tool, and today we're going deep on how he does it, what it costs, and why most people can't and probably shouldn't try to copy it. I'm your host, and this is Storm Mind. All right, so let's talk about how this guy's brain actually works, because it's genuinely different from most people. Antonio Gracias, he's been on SpaceX's board since the early days, invested his own money when everyone thought Elon was crazy. He said something that really stuck with me. He described talking to Elon as like plugging your brain into a lightning storm. And I love that description because it's not just about speed, right? Lots of smart people think fast. It's about the connections. So there's this concept in neuroscience called associative networks. Basically, it's how your brain links ideas together. For most of us, if I say car, you think transportation, maybe traffic, road trip, whatever. Pretty linear. Elon's brain, dude, it's like someone took that network and multiplied it by 10,000. He thinks car, and suddenly he's at battery chemistry, manufacturing, robotics, insurance, regulatory frameworks, whether the thing should crack jokes, how it connects to Mars colonization, like all at once. His brother Kimball talked about this. He said growing up, Elon would read 5 books simultaneously, not like reading one, getting bored, picking up another. Actually reading 5 different books, jumping between them, and somehow synthesizing all of it into these mental models of how everything works. Physics, economics, history, philosophy, it all goes into the same engine. Now, his ex-wife Justine called this the storm. And look, her account of their marriage it's tough to read. She talks about watching him go into what she called the tunnel, where he'd just disappear into a problem for 18 hours straight, forget to eat, forget they had dinner plans. Forget everything except whatever he was solving. She wrote, and this quote really got me, she said, "He doesn't think in terms of work-life balance, he thinks in terms of mission completion states. Either the mission is complete or everything else is just static noise." That's not healthy, right? Like, let's be real clear about that. That's not a model for how to live a balanced, happy life. But it might be the only way to do what he's done. And that tension between what works and what's sustainable, between breakthrough and breakdown, that's kind of the core of this whole story. Okay, so we need to talk about South Africa 1984. 12-year-old Elon gets thrown down a flight of concrete stairs at school. The beating is so bad he ends up in the hospital. His nose has to be reconstructed. He deals with breathing problems for years after. Why? Because he was small, awkward, bookish, because he'd read the entire Encyclopedia Britannica and would correct people. Because he didn't know how to be normal, and the kids at Bryanston High School decided to teach him a lesson. Now, here's what's fascinating from a psychological perspective. Most people who survive that kind of childhood trauma, and I mean really survive it, they spend the rest of their lives trying to find safety, building walls, avoiding conflict. Elon learned to run toward it. There's this story Dolly Singh tells. She was an early SpaceX employee, handled recruiting about a crisis during Dragon spacecraft development. A critical supplier completely failed, timeline blown. NASA's watching. Everyone's in panic mode waiting for Elon to show up to this emergency meeting. He walks in, doesn't even sit down. Okay, this is now a 2-week problem instead of a 6-month problem. Someone says, Elon, that's impossible. We'd have to redesign the entire... So we redesign it. Who here can't work 100 hours this week? Silence. Good, we're building it in-house. 3 different approaches by Monday. We prototype all 3 simultaneously, pick the one that works. Next problem. 15 minutes. That's the whole meeting. 2 weeks later, working solution. But here's the part that gets me. Dolly said half the team walked out of that room absolutely energized. Like, finally, clear direction, movement, action. The other half was terrified. They'd never worked for someone who treated physical reality like it was negotiable. And that's the thing about the storm mind, right? It creates breakthroughs and breakdowns, sometimes in the same person, sometimes on the same day. Let me take you to 2018. Tesla's burning $6,500 every single minute. The Model 3, this is the car that's supposed to save the company, bring Tesla to the masses. It's in what Musk later calls production hell. They're supposed to make 5,000 cars a week. They're making 2,000 on a good week. Wall Street is circling like sharks. Short sellers have bet billions that Tesla will collapse. The media isn't writing if Tesla fails, they're writing when. And Elon Musk is sleeping on the factory floor. Not like, oh, he visited and took a power nap. No, he's living there. Every night, there's a couch in a conference room off the assembly line. When someone else is using the couch, he sleeps under his desk. When that's taken, he sleeps on the floor. Jose, a production line worker, gave this interview to The Guardian, and he said, you'd see him at 2 a.m. crawling under the machines with the maintenance guys. The CEO of the company, covered in grease, arguing about bolt placement. Next morning, he's in a suit on a call with the banks. That afternoon, back on the line. But here's where it gets really interesting. Most leaders in crisis mode, they become conservative, right? They make careful decisions. They close ranks. In the middle of production hell, weeks from bankruptcy, Elon decided they needed to completely redesign part of the assembly process, not tweak it, redesign it from scratch. His VP of manufacturing, Peter Hawk Holdinger, came from Audi, knew his stuff, reportedly said, Elon, we can't. We need stability right now, not more chaos. Elon's response? Stability is what got us here. We need to break something to fix it. They hit 5,000 cars in the last week of June 2018, built a whole new assembly line in a tent in the parking lot because the factory ran out of room. A tent. Every manufacturing expert said it was impossible. That tent became legendary. But what nobody talks about enough? The cost, not the money, the human cost. There's something we need to address here, and it's not comfortable. The storm mind creates incredible things. It also destroys things, and sometimes what it destroys is people. There are dozens of accounts from former Tesla and SpaceX employees talking about burnout, about impossible expectations, about working 80, 90, 100-hour weeks and still feeling like it's not enough. One former SpaceX engineer, staying anonymous, told Bloomberg, you're part of something historic, and that's intoxicating. But the cost is everything else, your relationships, your health, your sense of self outside of work. And look, Elon would probably say, has said, that this is what it takes. That changing the world isn't a 40-hour-a-week job. That if you're not willing to give everything, you're in the wrong place. And maybe he's right. Maybe landing rockets and accelerating sustainable transport and getting humanity to Mars requires that level of intensity. But we should be honest about what that means. It means marriages falling apart. It means engineers burning out at 30. It means choosing mission over everything else, and not everyone can make that choice. Not everyone should. Justine Musk wrote about watching Elon expect the same kind of intensity from everyone around him that he has for himself. She said it was like watching someone who can breathe underwater getting frustrated that others need air. That's the dark side of the storm. It's not just chaos, it's a level of chaos that most human beings can't sustain. Okay, we have to talk about Twitter, or X, whatever we're calling it now. Because if you want to see the storm mind in real time, unfiltered, that acquisition is like a masterclass. October 2022, Elon buys Twitter for $44 billion, and within hours, he's firing executives. Within days, he's laid off half the company. He's sleeping at the office. He's tweeting at 3 a.m. He's making policy changes in real time based on user replies. The whole tech world is watching like, what is happening? And here's the thing, some of it worked. The company didn't collapse like everyone predicted. They shipped features faster. They cut costs dramatically. But some of it was a disaster. Advertisers fled. Trust and safety teams were gutted. The platform became this chaotic experiment where nobody knew what the rules were day to day. One former Twitter executive told The Verge, working with Elon is like being in a car with someone who's driving 100 miles an hour. Sometimes you get there faster, sometimes you crash. The problem is, you never know which one it's going to be until it happens. And I think that captures it perfectly. The storm mind doesn't care about your comfort. It doesn't care about stability. It cares about speed, iteration, breaking things to rebuild them better. The question is, what's the optimal amount of chaos? Because I don't think anyone would argue for zero chaos. Complete stability means stagnation, but 100% chaos, that's just destruction. Elon operates somewhere in between, and the fascinating thing is he seems to have an intuition for exactly how much chaos a system can handle before it breaks. With rockets, he pushed right to the edge, 3 explosions, and then figured it out. With Tesla, production hell nearly killed the company, but it survived. With Twitter, jury's still out, honestly. Okay, so let's talk about how this actually works, because it's not just chaos for chaos's sake. There's a method here. It's called first principles thinking, and Elon talks about it all the time. The idea is, instead of reasoning by analogy, we do it this way because that's how it's always been done. You break things down to fundamental truths and build up from there. Here's my favorite example. SpaceX in the early days, everyone in the rocket industry said, rockets are expensive because rockets are expensive. It costs $65 million per launch. That's just how it is. Elon asked a different question. What are rockets made of? Aluminum alloys, titanium, copper, carbon fiber, commodity materials. He did the math. The raw materials for a rocket cost about 2% of the rocket's price. 2%. So the question became, why is there a 50x markup between materials and final product? And the answer was, because of the system, the supply chain, the regulations, the way things have always been done. His conclusion, we can build rockets from scratch and it'll still be way cheaper. Everyone thought he was insane, and for 3 explosions, it looked like everyone was right. But the 4th launch worked, and suddenly SpaceX was offering launches at a fraction of industry prices. That's first principles thinking combined with the storm mind. You use chaos to challenge assumptions. You break the system to see what's actually necessary and what's just legacy thinking. But here's where it gets psychologically intense. To think in first principles when everyone's telling you you're wrong, when you've failed 3 times publicly, you need an almost pathological level of confidence. Or maybe it's not confidence, maybe it's something else. I want to read you something Elon said in an interview with Rolling Stone in 2017. The journalist asked him about stress, about how he handles the pressure. Elon said, if you're not in pain, you're not trying hard enough. I don't think you can create something new and interesting without pain. Let that sit for a second. Most people try to avoid pain. We optimize for comfort, for certainty, for peace of mind. Elon has reframed pain as a signal. If it doesn't hurt, you're not pushing hard enough. There's a term in psychology, stress inoculation. The idea that exposure to manageable levels of stress actually increases your tolerance for future stress, like building a muscle. I think Elon's done this to an extreme degree. Those early years, the bullying, the risk-taking, the failures, they didn't break him, they calibrated him. His pain tolerance is off the charts, which means he can operate in environments of chaos and uncertainty that would absolutely paralyze most people. But again, and I keep coming back to this, there's a cost. His first wife, Justine, described him as being in the tunnel so often that he wasn't really present for their family. His second wife, Tallulah Riley, married him twice and divorced him twice. He's talked about loneliness, about sacrifice, about how the mission always comes first. Is that worth it? I genuinely don't know. I think it depends on what you value. If you value impact, innovation, pushing humanity forward, then maybe that level of sacrifice makes sense. But if you value connection, presence, a life outside of work, then it's a terrible trade. The interesting thing is, I don't think Elon sees it as a trade. I think he sees the mission as life. Everything else is secondary. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Success changes the equation. When you're Elon Musk in 2008, Tesla's nearly bankrupt, SpaceX is on its last launch, you're going through a divorce, the economy's crashing, chaos is terrifying. You're one failure away from losing everything. But when you're Elon Musk in 2024, you're the richest person on Earth. Tesla's worth hundreds of billions. SpaceX is launching dozens of times a year. Starlink is profitable. Chaos becomes a tool you can afford to use. There's this concept in venture capital called fuck you money, the point where you have enough resources that you don't have to care what anyone thinks. You can take any risk. You can pursue any idea. Elon has fuck you money times 1,000, which means he can run experiments at Twitter that would kill a normal company. He can promise humanoid robots and brain-computer interfaces and underground tunnels, and even if half of them fail, he's still fine. The storm mind works better when you can afford for things to break. But here's the paradox. I think the storm mind is also what got him to that position in the first place. He was operating with that level of chaos and risk tolerance before he had the safety net. So which came first? Did success enable the chaos, or did the chaos create the success? I think it's a feedback loop. The chaos creates breakthroughs. The breakthroughs create resources. The resources enable more chaos, and the cycle compounds until you're the guy launching rockets, building electric cars, buying social media platforms, and promising to put 1 million people on Mars, all at the same time. Okay, so here's the question everyone wants to know. Can you learn this? Can you teach yourself to think like Elon Musk? And I think the honest answer is maybe, but you probably shouldn't try. Look, there are elements of his approach that are absolutely learnable. First principles thinking? Yeah, you can practice that. Breaking down assumptions? Asking why 5 times to get to root causes, that's a skill. High pain tolerance, you can build that through progressive exposure to challenges. Speed of execution, bias toward action over planning, those are habits you can develop. But the full package, the storm mind, I think that's partially innate and partially forged through experiences that most of us wouldn't survive intact. Tim Urban from Wait But Why spent time with Elon and wrote about his software. He described it as being optimized for a completely different objective function than most people. Most of us optimize for happiness, security, social acceptance. Elon's optimized for impact at any cost. And here's the thing, that's not better or worse, it's just different. If everyone operated like Elon, society would probably collapse. We need people who prioritize stability, who care for others, who build sustainable systems. But we also need a few people who are willing to charge into the storm, who see chaos as an opportunity, who will risk everything to prove something everyone says is impossible. The key is knowing which one you are. We're going to wrap up with Mars because I think it actually explains everything. Elon's been talking about Mars since forever, making humanity a multi-planetary species. It's the through line of his entire career, the reason for SpaceX, the motivation behind a lot of what he does. And from a pure rationality standpoint, it makes no sense, right? We've got problems here on Earth, climate change, poverty, disease. Why spend billions trying to get to Mars? But I think that's the wrong question. The question isn't why Mars. The question is, what kind of person needs Mars? And the answer is someone who needs a problem big enough to justify the chaos, someone who needs a mission impossible enough that total obsession makes sense, someone who needs to know that the struggle actually matters. Mars is big enough for the storm mind. In 2019, during a presentation, someone asked Elon why he was so focused on Mars when Earth has so many problems. He said something like, "I'm not suggesting we ignore Earth, but I think humanity needs inspiring goals. We need something to pull us forward. And making life multiplanetary is about as inspiring as it gets." But then he paused, and he said something else. He said also, "I just can't imagine being happy working on anything smaller." That's it right there. He can't imagine being happy working on anything smaller. The storm mind doesn't want peace. It wants a problem worthy of the chaos. And maybe that's the final lesson here. Not everyone needs what Elon needs. Most of us would be miserable living like that. But for the people who do need it, who have that restless, chaotic energy, maybe the answer isn't to suppress it. Maybe it's to find a problem big enough to channel it into. So where does this leave us? Elon Musk is not a role model in the traditional sense. He's not someone most people should try to copy. His life is not balanced. His relationships are not healthy. His expectations are not sustainable for normal humans. But he's done something extraordinary. He's proven that chaos can be a tool, that conventional wisdom is often wrong, that the impossible is usually just improbable, and improbable just means you haven't tried enough times yet. 3 rocket explosions before the 4th one worked. Production hell before Tesla became profitable. Years of being called crazy before the world caught up. The storm mind doesn't win because it avoids pain. It wins because it can endure more pain than the competition. It wins because when everyone else calls it quits, it sees one more move left on the board. Is it worth it? I think that depends on what you're trying to build. If you're trying to live a happy, balanced life, probably not. But if you're trying to change the world, if you're trying to do something that no one thinks is possible, then maybe you need a little bit of storm. The question isn't whether you should be like Elon Musk. The question is, what's your Mars? What problem is big enough that you'd be willing to embrace the chaos to solve it? Because here's the truth. Comfortable lives don't change the world. Storms do. Thanks for listening to this deep dive into the storm mind of Elon Musk. If this resonated with you, or if you totally disagree, I want to hear about it. Leave a comment, send a message, let me know what you think. And if you're working on your own impossible thing, good luck. Embrace the storm. I'll catch you next time.